Hello everyone, good morning, it's Michelle here. I do hope you're well and welcome to another Chris Watts video. Now, it's not often that I do a direct response to a creator. I address creators' ideas and I explore them myself in private, and then sometimes I make a video about them. But I am going to put a response to Just Larry and Seeking the Truth with Dave in the title of this video. This is not a call-out video. It's not a hate video by any means. I watch Just Larry. I watch Seeking the Truth with Dave. They stream at inappropriate times for me because I'm in the UK and Just Larry's 5 hours behind me, but Seeking the Truth with Dave I think is about, I don't know, something like 12 hours ahead of me. But I catch up on their stuff. Last night, my time, I watched a live stream by Just Larry, and Seeking the Truth with Dave was there. And they were discussing the possibility that the girls didn't die on the Monday, on the 13th. They were throwing around ideas, and that's great, but I want to address some of those ideas. Now, I know that it seems really difficult to understand why a mild-mannered family man who clearly loved his daughters, he played with them, he spent a lot of time with them, he was very involved in their life. He wasn't, one of these distant fathers who goes out to work, comes home and literally just goes about his life as if he was single. It's only in the last few weeks before the murders that Chris started to distance himself from the family because he'd started an affair with Nicole Kessinger. You might say, well, he couldn't have been happy for somebody to seek solace in another extramarital relationship, then there must be problems with the marriage to begin with. And in this case, I think that is true. There were problems. Chris wasn't happy. He's talked about that in the letters to Sherilyn Cadle. He talks about being fearful of Shanann, almost to the point of blaming her, reading between the lines, for what had happened. And he wasn't a happy man. How long he'd been unhappy, I don't know, but he was an unhappy man. He did want out of his marriage, but it's almost beyond comprehension that getting out of his marriage meant that he had to kill his entire family. But guys, that does happen. People who you really would not expect to commit crimes. I'm sorry, it's well possible. The more I look into the Watts case, the more I read the discovery again and again, and I find holes in it. Perhaps it's because that information didn't reveal anything of interest to the prosecution, and that's why it's not there. It's not necessarily that it's a cover-up of any kind, although I'm open to that possibility, as I've said in videos before. The more I look into it, the more I've gone back to my original thought that Chris did this on his own. Deeply disturbed, deluded man did this on his own. I've gone through every possibility. I've gone through every theory because I've no investment in this case. I don't know any of the parties involved. I've never spoken to Chris. I've never spoken to anyone from his family. I've never spoken to anyone from the Watts side of things. I have no vested interest in this. I'm being guided by the evidence. And that evidence has got things missing. It's like trying to complete a jigsaw puzzle, a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, where only 850 of the pieces are there. When I'm in that kind of situation, I go back to Occam's razor. And Occam's razor says that when you're faced with two hypotheses or more, you're throwing around theories. Usually, it's the simplest, most straightforward theory that is the correct one. I've been through every possibility. I've been through, did they plan to blow up the oil field for some kind of, insurance claim? And I've disregarded that because how would you blow up 2 oil tanks and make it look like a family had been annihilated because of it? It's in the middle of nowhere. It's much more difficult than you think to blow up crude oil. Anything's possible, but it would be an incredibly stupid plan that was doomed to failure. So if you disregard they plan to blow up the oil field hypothesis, then you throw out the possibility that any of the co-workers were involved. People have talked about Troy McCoy being involved. He was a bit shady in his interviews. The police had to go back and interview him again because it came to light that he'd gone back to Survey 319 and he was caught there by the water guy, and he didn't mention that in his first police interview. So it kind of looks shady. But maybe he was just going back because he was suspicious and he went to look. He just went to look. It was concerning. And he didn't mention it to the police originally because he didn't want to get Chris into trouble. He didn't want to speak out of turn. He liked Chris. And none of the other co-workers came off as being shady in any way. If you disregard the plan to blow up the oil field for insurance money, then you automatically negate the possibility that any of the co-workers were involved because there's absolutely no motive. None whatsoever. So then, the only other person who could be involved is, of course, Nicole Kessinger. And I've got a series called The Summer of Lies. I've been through the entire discovery from start to finish, searching for every mention of her name. I've listened to every interview again and again. I'm in the process of going through her entire phone bill of 2 months worth of calls just to see if there's any clues there. And although, she comes off as being incredibly shady, overly familiar with Agent Kevin Kobach, texting him at ridiculous times, telling him ridiculous things that she remembered, sending 7 pages of notes to Dave Baumhover in September when eventually Kevin Kobach was taken off the case. I mean, Kevin Kobach, he had the patience of a saint. She led him a merry dance. She flirted with him. He humoured her. He replied to her texts that were sent in the middle of the night. But at the end of the day, what evidence is there to pin her there? Well, there's some circumstantial evidence, the phone ping in Frederick on the morning of the 13th at 6:16 a.m. She called Jim. It was only a 1-minute call. Probably she didn't get through to him. But at the end of the day, one ping in Frederick isn't enough to accuse someone of a multiple murder. The police do have her records. They're not all in the discovery. I mean, only 1 month of phone bill are actually in the discovery. Why was she a protected identity? Does she have connections that were able to protect her? They know where she was. The records are there. They're not all in the discovery, but you've got to think to yourself, well, there must be very, very hefty connections. Very hefty. And I don't discount that. And that is one of the theories that I do keep coming back to again and again. She was kept out of it because she has connections, or her family have connections. But what motive would she have? Well, the motive could be she wanted to be Shanann. She wanted Shanann's life. She wanted his family out of the way. Well, if that's the case, then she'd want the girls out of the way as well. And I don't think that she'd want to get her hands dirty. So I don't think she was there on the morning of the murders or overnight. I don't think she was. The evidence doesn't point that way. And also just the type of person she is. She wouldn't want to get her hands dirty. She might be spiteful, resentful, want Shanann's life. She probably did know about the pregnancy. I think she lied through her teeth. But being a liar, being a narcissistic, uncaring, unempathic person, not even asking about Shanann's family, not just caring about herself and nothing more, self-preservation, that's horrible, but it doesn't make you a murderer. It doesn't. So, trying to find an answer about when did those beautiful, cute, intelligent, just so enchanting little girls when did they die? And I've read the autopsies, I've studied them, I have a little bit of medical knowledge, not an expert by any means, not employed in the medical field. I have researched, and there's no time of death for any of them. I think the fact that Bella and Cece were in crude oil and the amount of skin slippage they had, and I know it's horrible, I'm sorry guys. Given the highly unusual circumstances, yeah, maybe it wasn't possible to give a time of death. But Shanann was buried, and I don't know why there isn't a time of death for Shanann. So I can understand why there is this speculation. I can understand that. I do get it, and I've been through it all. Taking Occam's razor, taking out all of the people who just don't have a motive, so that's the co-workers, also includes Leave Jim Alone, Nicole's friend. What motive would he have? I think it's much more likely that Nicole said, leave Jim alone, because maybe he didn't know about Chris. Maybe she was having an affair with him or having a relationship with him, and she was cheating on him with Chris. Or maybe they were involved in some kind of three-way excitement, and, you know, her Google searches show that she was into, she was looking up certain sexual practices, and she didn't want that to come out. She was embarrassed. But he wouldn't have a motive to kill 3 people. What would he get from it? Nothing but a hefty jail sentence. So then it only leaves Nicole and Chris. And again, she knew far more. She lied through her teeth. But that does not make her a murderer. So I want to go through the basics. You can kind of consider the rest of this video really a summary of a number of videos that I've put out in the last month or so, just addressing different points. And if you haven't seen those videos, of course, go back to my Chris Watts playlist and check them all out, because I obviously go into more detail in those individual videos. But if we take it back and we just trace through what happened between the 13th and the 15th, and we see Chris, like, behaving so strangely, like, slow down the footage and look at his face. He's terrified. He's like, oh my God. Even Scott Coonrod asking him simple questions puts him in a state of panic. When he was at Nate's house, watching that footage, wishing somebody would come and beam him up into a spaceship and take him away. If he hadn't have put at least one of the bodies into his truck, why would he freak out at watching this security footage? Because he knew what was on there. We've all seen the shadows when you zoom in onto Nate's footage, and we've all seen those shadows. There is somebody else there. There is somebody else there. Now, I've done videos saying, can you see him carrying Shanann? Or do you see him picking up 2 children rather than 1? You definitely see him picking up 1 with its own independent shadow. We've heard the confession. You know, if you just listen to Chris, please listen to Chris, and you're going to say the Wisconsin confession, he was tied up in knots, he was just, you know, you go to KK and, you know, she says, well, he was pressured and he just had to come up with a story. Nonsense. Why would a mild-mannered family man put himself through that pain of saying what he did to his beautiful daughters? The emotion that you'd clearly hear in his voice is genuine in the Wisconsin confession. Why would he write it all down in the letters to Sherilyn? Why would he be questioning himself constantly? Why does he say that there's some things about that day that he will take to his grave? Why would he put himself through that? Go back to the most simplest explanation there is, and that is, he did it. And just Larry and Dave said, well, he didn't really know what happened to the girls on that day. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He just didn't want to admit it. He took the Tammy Lee easy way out. He had in the back of his mind that letter that his family made him write, or helped him write. Come on, guys. Right, if he was trying to hide Nicole Kessinger, if he was, he knew she had connections and he was fearing for his life, for his family's life, so he needed to keep her out of it, why wouldn't he just carry on blaming Shanann? Shanann's dead. Why wouldn't he have kept that confession going, that first confession? Why go through that emotional turmoil of saying, well, they just wanted something at the Wisconsin confession? He was trying to keep Nicole Kessinger out of it, but yet save face for himself. Then carry on with the Shanann story. She's dead. He hated her. He wanted out of his marriage. He could carry on blaming her for the rest of his life, but he didn't. So from a psychological perspective, right, and bringing in Occam's razor, why go to pains? Why put yourself through that if it wasn't true? There's quite a lot of creators and people that follow him who say Shanann was taken out of the back, Chris didn't take Shanann to survey. Come on, guys. How would they get a living woman out of that basement, or a dead woman out of that basement through the Mickey Mouse window? Why would you have two scenes going on, one at the front and one at the back? Does not make sense. As I said in my Did They Take Shanann Out the Back video, it does not make sense. So again, we have to go back to the most simplest explanation, that Chris spent, nearly half an hour loading that truck backwards and forwards. We know he was up to something. He was terrified when he was watching Nate's footage. There is someone else there. It's a little shadow. Why would you have another scene going on at the back? The only other person who had a possible motive is Nicole Kessinger, 5'1" or something she was. Quite a slight build. How would she manhandle a dead woman out of that Mickey Mouse window while Chris was out the front? No one else had motive. I don't care what you say. So that does not make sense to me. There's the ping on your screen right now. There it is, August the 13th, 6:16 a.m. That's the only thing I come back to, honestly. And she could have been passing through. I've said in videos it's strange. She doesn't take that way to work normally. Maybe she was just jealous. She knew Shanann had come back. She was overtaken by jealousy and just wanted to kind of drive that way. And maybe she was planning to go and confront Shanann. Maybe she was planning to go and wake Shanann up and tell her what was going on. Think about this. Chris has said that if that lazy dog trip on the Saturday night hadn't have happened, things might have been different. Maybe on that night she gave him an ultimatum, and she said, if you don't tell Shanann as soon as she comes back from Arizona, I'm telling her myself. And maybe she took that way to work. I know she didn't clock in, and Dwayne, her dad, tried to say, weren't you at a doctor's appointment or something? He dropped that into one interview, but maybe she was on her way there to confront Shanann, and maybe she chickened out. That's a more viable possibility than saying she manhandled a dead woman or a living woman who surely would be been kicking and screaming out of the Mickey Mouse window. Those shadows and that behaviour on the early morning of the 13th, they don't lie. Look, they don't lie. There's somebody else there, a little shadow. The last thing I want to mention is the dogs. I know Larry's talked about the dogs. I think Dave's disregarded the dogs. Cody the Labrador, he doesn't lie. He knew exactly what was going on. The way that once he got onto Black Mesa Road, we know that Chris stopped at one of these houses and he put some things in a dumpster. We can see Cody pointing to it, desperate to get through that fence. We can see that. It's there on Officer Lyne's body cam. And they ignored him. Now, Chris said he put clothes or something in the dumpster. Well, that would have been evidence that could have been collected on the 14th. It would have implicated Chris, that could have been tested right there. If Chris hadn't have done this, there wouldn't have been scent on his clothes, would there? Like, so strong that Cody the Labrador picked it up. You know, he picked it up on the air before he even got there. Before he got anywhere there, he was searching the air, putting his face up to the air, sniffing, and then going back down and looking for a trail. Cody alerted like mad in the basement. And there is that hypothesis that Sherilyn Cadle, I keep coming back to this, guys, that Sherilyn Cadle, and I know some of you think she lies, and she does elaborate on the truth, you know, that someone's going to be arrested this week. Of course they're not. But I think the basis of what she's saying and what Chris has told her is the truth. And why was Cody going mad in the basement? Not because Shanann was down there, but because he thought he killed Cece, and he took her down in the basement, and he was going to put her in a bag or a tote. And she woke up. She woke up, guys. It's horrible. But we do know from Sherilyn's letters that he killed them twice. He tried to suffocate them in the house. And it didn't work. And that's why he took them alive to serve it. And he didn't know what else to do. That's what he said. His own words. He didn't know what else to do. If this was planned by multiple people, well, it's even more of a stupid plan than it was anyway. And it was a really stupid plan. It would, why take them to your workplace? It's crazy. No planned out kind of multiple, conspirators. They wouldn't have planned that. That's crazy. Because once we take out that blowing up the oil site is just not a possibility as a theory, there's no reason to take those people, alive or dead, to serve it. There's no way you'd do it. I mean, look, there's like miles and miles and miles and miles of desert. You'd take them out into the desert and bury them there. You wouldn't put them at your workplace. So that was the act of a desperate man. And I do believe that there was a premeditation there. Certainly of Shanann, he just couldn't cope anymore. He probably knew eventually it was inevitable. He couldn't cope anymore. I don't think he originally wanted to kill his girls. I really don't. But he decided that was his only option. And maybe he's somewhat vague on some of the details because he was going through a period of dissociation, chronic lack of sleep, chronic stress that he was putting himself through. Does the weirdest things to people, honestly. So from a psychological perspective, taking Occam's razor into account, taking everything we know about that situation into account, the only logical explanation there is what Chris has said is actually the truth, or at least a close variation thereof. So were the girls alive on Monday morning? Yes. But they died at Survey, as Chris said. He tried to kill them before, it didn't work, so he took them alive to Survey. I think probably Cece was brain damaged, but Bella wasn't. And I keep coming back to, did Bella walk up those stairs herself? And I think she might have done. I think she did. So that's my theory, and why I think that Chris did this himself. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Again, no hate or shade towards Dave or Larry. I just want to apply Occam's razor to this. I've been Michelle. I do hope you're well, and I'll see you very soon in the next video.